be. And then there's, of course, the story yesterday, and Travis Brown will join us today from the Bryan College Station Eagle, covers Texas A&M, that the 12th Man Foundation, they have yet another part or a new NIL. And the first response I saw from a lot of people, I even had those at A&M like, man, that's putting it right on that football game where you had the paper football and you have to get it right over the edge of the ledge where it falls off. That some were like, oh, my goodness, how can they do that? Well, Travis Brown's going to join us today at around 4:15 to discuss this further. What's the difference here in what A&M has been doing and what A&M is attempting or will do?
Okay, the 12th Man Foundation started what's called the 12th Man Plus Fund. And what the 12th Man Plus Fund does that is different, so usually NIL collectives, because they can't really be involved directly with the university, will have the students, like, for example, Texas and their offensive linemen thing, they're getting $50,000 a year, and in exchange for that, they will help promote charitable causes to whatever extent that happens. But they will promote charitable causes, and, you know, that's how they justify having this NIL contract. What A&M is doing is, instead of, you know, Habitat for Humanity or something, they 12th Man Plus Fund will have students generally just helping raise money for the athletic department. So it's all kind of cyclical. So if you're going to
Baylor, for example, you know, everyone has one of these. Baylor has the Bear Foundation. The more you donate, the more bells and whistles you get. Could be travel packages or better seats or tickets or whatever, access.
So you could have a meet and greet session with players on the team. Say you get an Nia Smith or Connor Wigman or Evan Stewart or Moose Muhammad, and probably all four of them. You have those four guys at an event, and they're going to do this event, and the point of the event is they're going to get a little bit of money, well, probably a lot of bit of money, and the school's going to get a lot of bit of money. So that way it's the same thing, because donations to a university are charitable donations, but it's going directly to Texas A&M. So now you don't have to wonder, like, you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. If you're going to give money to NIL, you're now helping the university and the players. Now, this is right up against the wall of the current NCAA rules.
Really?
Right up, over the line.
Is there a wall?
Yeah, but of what the rules are written down. Again, they are just betting that it's not really all that enforceable. And I am betting that mostly because Texas and Florida, when it comes to things like this, are in a race to see who can match the other one. Their governors seem to like to one-up each other or match them. I don't think this will be long before in Texas they're going to be like, no, they can do this. Same, like, let's take out, search and replace the Florida, the word Florida in the law and put Texas in it, and that'll be done.
I mean, yeah, basically this is the absolute closest you could possibly be to the NIL being related to the school and the players. I mean, it's supposed to not be close together. It's supposed to be separated, and this is like as close as you can possibly be without officially being all together. So they found a way to go right up against the invisible wall of rules, like they're smushed up against it as best they can, and bending it to where it probably can't bend much more without just blatantly being against the rules. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
I mean, this is as far as you can take it and keep it, quote unquote, legal in the current landscape of rules. So, raise your hand if you're surprised A&M was the one to do this. No. I mean, not me. They've been very much on the forefront of a lot of these, extra added benefits or possibilities or opportunities over the last few years. I'm fascinated to know in like 20 years when all, these next couple of decades have passed, and Oklahoma and Texas will have been in the SEC for a couple of decades, and A&M will have been in there for like 3 decades at that point. And we know they've spent gobs and gobs and gobs of money. And they're by far not the only one. Like the two schools I just mentioned spend gobs of money as well. But A&M, I mean, they've really put the full court press, right, in a lot of different ways, or tried to be like the first to the table, or tried to be unique in some ways to get over that mountain that has been, winning that elusive championship, whether that be an SEC or a national championship. And I mean, they are not sparing any expense, I think it's fair to say, and haven't been for quite some time. And they're only going to be making more and more money as they go along. And now there's this NIL era where there's basically now there's no rules. I mean, barely there's any rules. Will this ever pay off for them is what I wonder, because it hasn't so far to the extent that they would like it to. Not that they haven't had any success or anything. But, I mean, you talk about school trying to do everything it possibly can.
Within,
like, I'm not saying they're, it's all within the rules, but doing every single thing they possibly can, whether it was, back when someone was bringing out the swag copter, everything that's somewhat new, they are seemingly on the cutting edge or front of and trying to maximize that and utilize that as best they can. And I just will be fascinated, like I said, to see, not just for them necessarily, but they're a very interesting case because of where they kind of are in the pecking order and kind of how they're viewed, and the fact that they're very much going to be affected by the moves that take place here in the next year with two of their former, one of them more of a rival than the other, but two teams they didn't want to be with anymore. Now with them in this great SEC landscape, I think when you write the book on this era of college football, it will be mightily interesting to see where A&M is in that conversation and what their efforts ultimately led to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they're one of the more unique, I think, cases of all of these. Yeah. And Miami will be too at some point, and then there will be others. But A&M, I mean, they really all along have been trying to find that extra little thing that they can do or be the best at that puts them over this mountaintop. And they are so close, it feels like, but there's just a step they haven't been able to go just yet. So I'm fascinated by that.
And maybe with what they've been able to do, in some cases guys leaving, in some cases because they probably didn't want them back, and some that are disenchanted, or some that were promised whatever. And it doesn't have to be just money and NIL. It could be just promises of playing time. Maybe they'll settle into who they are. But, yeah, you're right. They've got two teams coming in that are, two programs. Now, they were good in the COVID year, but that's gone. But, yeah, it's time for them to be able to post back-to-back-to-back type years, you would think, in a conference which is hard to do that, and now getting tougher in 2024.
They are historically, if you look at everything, if you look at that university as a whole over the last, say 45 years or so, once they went co-ed and they got bigger, and the university's done nothing but grow, right? If you look at the university side, and I'm sure there are some things that people could point out to me that they're not great at, but everything has grown exponentially, and they've kind of dominated a lot of things. And the university just grows and grows and grows. It's enormous. It's a behemoth. They used to not, like, the reason that Texas used to be able to tell A&M what to do is that A&M was an all-male military school, and Texas was way, way bigger. That is not even close to the case now. They're very much on equal footing when it comes to university size and money and grants and everything that comes in. Where A&M is such a conundrum is, if you look at the rest of their athletic department, they've won national championships in every sport except for baseball, men's basketball, and the one that they would literally blow up the rest of the state to do if they could is football. And they've never been able to figure it out. They've come on the door of taking that step to where they could perennially be a contender, and then somehow, some way, they trip over their own feet and they're back to who they always were, between three different conferences, between coaches, facilities, money, NIL. They are still who they've always been when it comes to football, and it is weird.
Yeah, it is. It really, it's a great way to put it. It is, and it no matter what, God bless them for trying, but also sometimes almost to the point where they try so hard that something's missing. And we'll see what happens as they move into this year without so many expectations, or so much the expectations were last year entering the year. Fair. They were absolutely fair. The problem I always had before last year, we'll get on to some other things as well, I always wondered who the hell's going to help him at quarterback. And I love, Haynes King. But I always wondered, are they that good where they can just have a bus driver at quarterback, or someone who's okay? Like LSU was able to win a couple of national titles with, what was it, Mock and Matt Flynn.
Yeah, well, that was 20 years ago.
No,
I understand what you mean, but that's a different era now.
I know.
I think you got to have a quarterback at this point. And I know, some old Stetson Bennett wasn't the greatest. He had I understand that to an extent. You can have a bus driver, but I do think you have to have a guy that can play at QB. You can't just have some some average Joe and expect to compete for the biggest of titles. So that was a problem for them. Their culture was a bit of a problem as well. Probably might have something to do with the fact that they're like, here's everything you ever imagined. Come to College Station. And that kind of can create a little bit of entitlement. And that can maybe bring some bad apples into the bunch. And they've had to clean up some of that. And I think that's part of the recorrecting of you know, what they were doing and how they were doing it, and probably realizing, okay, like, we learned a lesson there. We have to be better about this. But nobody invests more, spends more, wants it more than them. And it's only seemingly going to get harder, but they keep finding ways to try and get that advantage, whether it's a fundraising or whether it's this or that. And now it's this 12th man plus what, you know, whatever it's going to be. And others will follow suit. And it'll just be interesting to see if, you know, ultimately all these efforts and all this passion can take them to a place that they haven't been. And they're not on a timetable. I mean, Jimbo might be on a little bit of time, but even that is an example, like the massive buyout that he has that hangs like an albatross around their neck. How does that experiment go ultimately? Because it's, you know, any lack of success won't be for a lack of trying. That's for dadgum sure.
All right. This is, remember yesterday.